listener production.
Hello, Sasha Barbagat with you. Welcome to The Briefing. It has been an absolutely insane 24 hours of news with the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. We are going to get you across everything you need to know in the headlines before our deep dive into the surging Australian dollar. Benzion Siebert is here with me. Let's get into it. It's Monday, July 15.
Good morning, Sasha. So we all witnessed history yesterday with the attempted assassination of former US President Donald Trump.
If you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
It's shocking, isn't it? He'd been speaking at a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania on Saturday local time when a gunman opened fire, clipping Trump's right ear, killing one man and leaving two others in a critical condition.
I heard several gunshots. The man beside me suffered a gunshot wound to the head, was instantly killed.
The spectator killed at the rally has been identified as 50-year-old Corey Comparatore. Witnesses say he jumped to cover his family when the shots rang out. The gunman was also killed. More on him in a little bit. Several Secret Service officers ran onto the stage to protect Trump as the firing was happening. He was kept down for about 25 seconds. Snipers on a roof not far away from the stage then sprang into action, shooting the gunman dead within seconds of him opening fire.
Yeah, you said it. It was absolutely shocking watching that footage. You see Trump grab his ear. But I think the following moment is what took so many by surprise, and it will come to be the defining image of this event. So Trump stood up, blood on his face, and he raised his fist defiantly in the air, appearing to mouth the word fight a couple of times. He was then rushed from the stage into his motorcade and taken to hospital. Now, not long afterwards, we got confirmation from Trump's people that he was safe and he was okay. Then Donald Trump himself posted to Truth Social, and I'll read out what he wrote. He said, "I want to thank the United States Secret Service and all of law enforcement for their rapid response on the shooting that just took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. Most importantly, I want to extend my condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed and also to the family of another person that was badly injured. It is incredible that such an act can take place in our country. Nothing is known at this time about the shooter who is now dead. I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong in that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realised then what was happening. God bless America." You can imagine Benzion was probably in a bit of shock when he put that statement together. Being shot, how does your body even react to that?
Absolutely, and I guess the incredible thing to think about is that they got his ear. It was just so close to it being Trump being assassinated. Trump was rushed to hospital, but he was released pretty quickly. His campaign later released a video of him getting off a flight in New Jersey and giving a short wave. He's since released another statement saying, "In this moment, it's more important than ever that we stand united, show our true character as Americans, remaining strong and determined and not allowing evil to win." Let's now talk about the gunman. So the FBI has identified 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, who was pronounced dead at the scene. Members of the public have told reporters that they saw Crooks army crawling up the side of the building to a nearby roof in the minutes before the shooting happened.
I'm pointing at that roof, and next thing you know, 5 shots ring out.
Lots of questions will be asked for sure about how that happened. According to authorities, there was some explosive material that was found in Crook's car. Also complicating questions about the motive for investigators. Crooks was a registered Republican, that's Trump's party, but records show he also donated $15 to a political action committee aligned with the Democratic Party 3 years ago when he was 17. This year's election would have been the first presidential election he was able to vote in, but he did vote in the 2022 midterms as a Republican. President Joe Biden says the attacker's motive remains under investigation.
We don't yet have any information about the motive of the shooter. We know who he is. I urge everyone, please, Don't make assumptions about his motives or his affiliations. Let the FBI do their job and their partner agencies do their job. I'm instructed that this investigation be thorough and swift, and the investigators will have every resource they need to get this done.
Meanwhile, there is a report that a police officer began to climb onto the roof where Crook was preparing to open fire, but didn't have a gun with them, so had to drop down from the roof just before all this took place.
Let's turn now to what happens next and also how this event will inevitably impact the election. First things first, this is a massive week for the Republican Party as they have their national convention. Now, this is where Donald Trump is due to be formally named as the nominee for the party in this year's presidential election. Trump has confirmed he will be attending the event that's happening in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We don't know yet what day he's going to be confirmed as the nominee, but the convention is due to start Monday local time, so that's later tonight and into tomorrow for us. Joe Biden has confirmed the Secret Service will provide everything needed for the safety of his political rival, and the Secret Service is also going to review all security measures at this convention. So a big spotlight, Bension, is going to be put on security and safety at this event.
Absolutely, arguably the darkest day for the Secret Service in decades. As we mentioned, there are really serious questions about how it was possible for this shooter to get access to a roof some 130 metres away from Trump and then begin firing before really any response. Biden has ordered an independent review into the security at the event, but it's the job of the Secret Service to keep former presidents and presidential candidates safe. So lots of questions being asked there. This will also, of course, feed into conspiracy theories on both extremes of American politics. On one side, the deep state, on the other, noticing that this will benefit Trump's campaign. We've also heard from world leaders who've responded to the shooting, with PM Anthony Albanese calling it an attack on democracy.
This was an inexcusable attack on the democratic values that Australians and Americans share and the freedom that we treasure.
Joe Biden has spoken again this morning, calling for unity.
I'll be speaking more about this tonight at greater length from the Oval Office. We must unite as one nation. We must unite as one nation to demonstrate who we are. And so may God bless you all and may God protect our troops. Thank you very much.
So that Oval Office address will happen at 8 p.m. local time, which is 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, so what does this all mean for the election? I mean, it's yet to be seen, but experts and, political watchers right across the spectrum think that this is going to be a huge boost for Donald Trump just ahead of him being named formally as the presidential nominee. As I said earlier, that image of him standing there, blood on his face, fist in the air, defiant, and some criticism I've seen has been around how people have questioned, the safety of democracy under Donald Trump. And now this image of him, being under attack for being a politician and having these views is going to galvanize his base to be like, no, like he's protecting us. He's fighting for us. So it's expected to give this huge boost to Trump and also his supporter base who'll just be galvanized by this incident. And maybe for the first time in his political career, Trump is evoking sympathy from people. I don't think anyone wants to see anybody shot, especially for their political views. In Australia as well, we have very strong beliefs about people being able to have their say and have their beliefs. And, that sentiment is echoed in most places around the world. So him being the victim of this attack, people feel sorry for him.
That image also of Donald Trump standing with his fist up, it says everything that the Trump campaign has wanted to say about him and his masculine presence. The strategy of the campaign has been, let's show that Trump is strong and Biden is weak. And this will absolutely feed into that narrative. Now, J.D. Vance, who's shaping up as one of the leading contenders for Trump's nomination for vice president, said it was Democrats' rhetoric about Trump, as in accusing him of being an authoritarian and a fascist, had directly led to this attempt on his life. Now, let's stand aside from the facts of the matter, which is that Donald Trump has said a whole lot of stuff which makes him sound very much like an authoritarian. But as we mentioned, this will feed into conspiracy theories. Now, it's too early for there to have been polling, of course, but as you mentioned, pundits expect that this will be a big boost for Donald Trump and the Republicans. And in terms of Joe Biden, we were preparing over the weekend for the possibility that he might withdraw, and that's not going to happen now, or at least that's going to be delayed if it was going to happen. But this certainly makes things a lot more difficult for Democrats and for Joe Biden, no matter what happens.
Yeah, look, this is a massive thing to have happened in a nation that is already so deeply divided along political lines. There will be a lot more to come from this story, and we'll keep you across it over the days to come. All right, let's get into our deep dive, a little palate cleanser. We're going to be looking at the Aussie dollar and why it's surging at the moment.
Hi, Katrina here. Now, I think we all know someone who's heading overseas to flee Australia's winter. It is the annual migration season that makes us also very jealous on Instagram. But the good news for travellers or anyone who wants to travel is the Aussie dollar is buying more overseas than it has in more than 6 months. It is particularly strong right now against the US greenback. So why is the Aussie dollar doing so well, and what does it mean for our economy locally? Is it good or bad news? And more importantly, I guess, for holiday seekers, what should we be doing to plan ahead in the countries we're deciding to go to? To find out, I'm joined by Angel Zhong, who's a senior lecturer in finance in the School of Economics, Finance and Marketing at Melbourne's RMIT. Angel, welcome to the briefing. Why is our dollar doing so well at the moment?
Thanks so much for having me today. So in terms of why the price of the Australian dollar is so high, I think that goes back to the fundamental principle of what determines the price. So in the financial market, what determines the price is the rule of supply and demand. So it means when the price of something is really high, that means the demand must be high. So what pushes the demand for Aussie dollars? There are two major factors. First, the Aussie dollar is known as, the commodity currency. That means if someone offshore, they want to buy our iron ore, copper, and something else, because we are a resource-based economy, they need to purchase AUD to buy our commodity. And overseas, especially in China, the demand for commodity has been so resilient that also pushes up the demand of AUD, so that price of AUD remains high. There's a second factor, which is the interest rate. I know as Australians, we've been grappling with, a series of rapid rate hike, and we are praying for the interest rate to come down, especially for those with the home loan. I mean, yes, high interest rate is bad news for Aussie, especially for our everyday life. However, that is actually good news for AUD. Compared to other countries, Australia was late to the game of increasing interest rate. So when it comes to reducing the interest rate, Australia is also relatively late. So given that we have a higher interest rate relative to other countries, it attracts a lot of foreign investment, foreign money flow into the market because we have higher interest rate. So they want more AUD. They want to invest in more AUD. That is another reason that pushes up the price of Aussie dollars.
I haven't heard too many silver linings about having high interest rates here, so I guess it is good that we've got at least one thing on our side for this scenario. Tell me about the Aussie dollar being measured, though, against the greenback. Is that kind of a ruling principle, and why is that the case?
Yeah, so that is another reason, because when you measure, the price of one currency, you always measure it relative to something, not just what you mentioned, and also other currency. And because we have been known as the commodity currency, I think that's why it's the case.
So the Aussie dollar is now at a 1-year high against the euro, the Chinese yuan, the Japanese yen, and the New Zealand dollar. I guess from the perspective of myself, speaking selfishly here, and also our beautiful listeners, Is that a good thing for travellers?
Absolutely. I mean, yes, high interest rate is not a good news for Australians, but at least it is good news for those who love traveling overseas. But we also need to look at, again, the relative performance of AUD to other currency. So, for example, if you want to travel to France for the Olympic Games, that is a good timing because AUD to euro is at the highest point in the recent 2 years. And similarly, we are performing really well against the Japanese currency, as well as I know there's a dream destination for a lot of Australians, which is Indonesia. So AUD is doing relatively well to the Indonesian currency as well.
That is good news. I've got a Bali trip coming up, so that is very exciting. However, it is weird though, because even though we're doing quite well in terms of the euro, we're still not performing very well against the pound in the UK. Why is that?
I guess there are a lot of factors. What happens is that if, for example, in France and in other European countries, there is a great amount of uncertainty going on, especially driven by the recent French election. But in terms of things happening in the UK, I think it has pretty much settled. They now have a new government. And also the UK economy isn't performing so bad. So it's all relative. So that's why we need to look at both what's happening in Australia as well as what's happening in another country.
Yeah, you just mentioned the elections there. We've got a US election coming up, of course. How do you think that could have an impact on our dollar?
That is why our dollar is also doing relatively better compared to USD. And also, let's not forget that they may reduce their interest rate earlier than us. That's why we are also doing better than AUD. So it's also a good time if you want to travel to New York or other cities in the United States.
I mentioned the Chinese yuan and the Australian dollar performing well, and given we get so many imports from China, is a stronger dollar in China good news for prices of electronics and consumer goods here, or is it bad news?
Again, it is all relative. So one of the reasons that AUD is doing so well is because one of our biggest customers is China, who buy a lot of our mining resources. And it is because the Chinese economy is performing, there is a really pessimistic outlook, but they're not doing as bad as we predict. That is why they have resilient demand for commodity, which pushes up the price of AUD. So I guess we want their economy to do better so that they buy a lot of our mining resources.
You've mentioned a few countries now, Indonesia, Europe, Japan, New Zealand. Where else? Where else is our Aussie dollar performing really well? What are some other holidays that maybe we can start to think about to get bang for our buck?
Actually, most of the countries in the world, I think, because when AUD increases, the price increases all across the world. I guess, because of the Olympic Games, a lot of Aussies may be going to France. And you can also, tour around European countries near France. So I think, in general, Euro would be a dream place for all Australian travellers.
Okay, I'm seeing a lot of Europe on my Instagram feed right now, which I'm very jealous about. So looking into your crystal ball, do you think the Aussie dollar is likely to remain strong, or is it going to soften? What should we be thinking about, when we're planning our leave for the next kind of 6 to 12 months?
I think the good news is not just my prediction, because so based on the economic data and the growth trajectory, as well as the consensus of other economists, it seems like the Aussie dollar will continue to perform strong within the next 6 to 12 months. So that means you can still go overseas during Christmas.
Hooray! I love this. Thank you, Angel. You've given us all the optimism that we need, because everybody needs a holiday to look forward to. Thank you so much for joining us on The Briefing.
Thanks so much for having me today.
That was Angel Zhong, Senior Lecturer in Finance in the School of Economics, Finance and Marketing at Melbourne's RMIT. Thank you for listening to today's briefing. That is all from us for now. Before you go, though, we'd love it if you could share this episode with someone you think might enjoy it or could get some value from it. It is how we get our podcast out into that very competitive world of podcasts. If you want to keep up with our other content, you can check us out on Instagram too. Our handle is @TheBriefingPodcast, and also on TikTok and YouTube. Just search Listener Newsroom. I'm Katrina Blowers. Have a great day, and I'll catch you next time.
listener.